Welcome to the Key to All Things Real Estate podcast, your top source for everything you need to know about the Tennessee real estate market. I'm Krystal Gray, your host and Nashville-based super realtor, and I'm excited to have you with us today. Each week, I sit down with real estate professionals, industry experts, and people just like you to explore the latest trends, share valuable insights, and offer practical tips to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, an experienced investor, or just curious about the local market, this podcast is your one-stop shop for all things real estate in Tennessee. We're proudly sponsored by the Classic Key Real Estate School, where we believe in empowering you with knowledge and skills to make the best real estate decisions. So grab you a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's unlock the doors to your real estate success together. Are you ready? That's a wrap for this episode of the Key to All Things Real Estate podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, your host, Krystal Gray. I hope you found our discussion insightful, valuable for your real estate journey. And a big thank you to our sponsor, the Classic Key Real Estate School, for making this podcast possible. If you'd like to dive deeper into real estate topics or get your real estate license, or if you need continuing education credits, check them out for expert guidance and resources. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. This way you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's conversation, leave us a review and share it with your friends. Your feedback helps us keep bringing you the best content. If you have any questions or topics you would like for us to cover, reach out to us on social media or email us at krystal@classickeyrealty.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, let's keep unlocking the doors to your real estate success. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Guys, this is Krystal Gray here, your host of the Key to All Things Real Estate podcast. Today we have an awesome guest joining us. We have Mr. Reed Sircy joining us this morning. Reed is a realtor here in Nashville, Tennessee. He's negotiated over $50 million in his career in real estate. He's a local unicorn in Nashville. Reed also attended Lipscomb University. He worked with Southwestern Advantage for about 5 summers, where he trained and mentored and coached other students. He is also a past graduate of Young Leaders Council, and he actively serves on the Kiwanis Club Directors Board, Lipscomb University Alumni Board, the Kiwanis Foundation Board, and Beacon Center Young Professional Network. He is also a past board member of Christian Business Leaders Roundtable, avid bourbon collector and enthusiast. I want some bourbon. Real estate investor, and he is an expert on Nashville. So we're going to talk to Reed this morning and see how he's hanging here in this Nashville real estate market. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yes.
I appreciate the invite, Krystal.
Yes, awesome. So we'll get started. I'm just going to ask you a few questions to get to know you a little bit more, and also
Sure.
get to learn your take on what you think about the real estate market and all those good things. So
Sure.
you work for Southwestern Advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there you sold educational products?
I did. So I actually heard about that company because growing up, my dad was the CFO. And so when I was a kid, I used to go on all the incentive trips with all the top salespeople. And really back then, the only thing that I knew is that you worked really hard and a lot of people did very well and made a lot of money on it. And eventually got to college and started learning more about it. And it is pretty much the most intense thing that you can do for a summer. It is the true iron sharpens iron of sales selling educational books. It's literally door to door. It's the most ridiculous thing that you can imagine. But was there for 5 years and had some really great experience, met some really fantastic people, and had thousands of hours of educational training with, especially when it comes to sales.
Wow. So what type of educational books were these? Did they vary or was it something specific or
It was a lot of like kind of kids books helping people get interested in reading, which is obviously a
gotcha.
very powerful development thing. But then a lot of it was college prep stuff, ACT prep, SAT. And then
Okay.
a lot of it ended up being like a Spark Notes version of just like really helping parents help their kids because it's challenging. If anyone's had kids that go through math, you are not in the classroom with them and then they teach it differently. And so,
Yeah, absolutely. I used to tell my kids, I have to go to Google to help you with your homework now because it's different than when I
exactly.
learned it in school. So that does make sense. So from Southwestern Advantage, you stayed there about 5 years and then you went to Property Management Connection. Is that correct?
Yeah. So long story short, I was trying to figure out kind of next steps. I knew that I had a real interest in working with people. I wasn't necessarily wanting to be this churn and burn type of salesperson, but I really enjoyed the human interaction. I think that
Mm,
that's one of the things that drew me to real estate is it is a relationship type sale. And so I met with a ton of people and ended up learning about the powers of real estate. And I was like, that makes sense. I think that's one of the things that I would like to do. And if I'm going to do that, it'd be really cool to help my friends do that.
mm,
So now today, when I'm talking about real estate, I always try to think of like long-term trajectories with people. Some people have a goal. They just want to live in the house. Like they just want to love where they live. One of the goals that I've set personally is to try to buy a house every 2 years. And through that
okay.
process is it really starts to multiply with the momentum that you have of equity and you start moving things around and it opens and unlocks a lot of freedom if
Hmm.
if you can sacrifice a little early on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what would you say your time at the Property Management Connection? What were some valuable lessons that maybe you learned there and you carried throughout your real estate career?
It was really helpful picking out properties that we'd want to manage basically.
Hmm.
And then it was also really helpful in my development of being an investor of looking at what are the properties that people will compete for, which ones continue to grow in rent, and what are the type of tenants that I want to manage because
Hmm.
everything that I own personally, I manage.
Okay.
And there are certainly, Section 8 sounds phenomenal. And you always have these gurus that say, invest here, you can do this. But after spending a lot of time working on those properties, in my experience, you have a lot of the units that are better quality, better tenants, higher rent. The first property that I bought was a house hack. And I ended up having basically just a couple roommates and they helped me pay the mortgage.
Okay.
And there's a lot of benefits to that property, but it had a bunch of negatives. One of which it was a huge property, but you had to go up what felt like Mount Everest to get in there, just like 5 steps too many.
Oh,
So when you
wow.
got to the top, you were just out of breath. And I still own that property today, but that was the first property that I thought I would sell given the opportunity. But it's
Um,
become one of my favorites because every time I turn it over and put a new tenant in there, rent goes up by $200. And so that helped me realize that better quality properties and better areas that are developing quickly tend to appreciate. Now, of course, I've done a bunch of stuff to that property, doing
yeah.
updates and stuff. But that's another thing is just having a good quality product that you believe in that other people will fight for.
That's awesome. Awesome. So you did mention the one of the reasons you were attracted, I guess, into the real estate world is because the relationships that you are able to build with people. How do you keep in touch with your clients now? How do you keep that relationship intact?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I think every real estate agent is really working on developing and getting better at it. So my business is purely built by sphere of influence. So I don't really buy leads or anything like that. So I do a lot of networking, and just naturally, you end up seeing a lot of those key referral players constantly doing that. I try to be really involved with the organization and the community. There's several organizations that are near and dear to my heart that we do a lot of things with, and so I think a lot of it is that. And then I'm also, I'm behind the game. I'm really trying to build up my CRM so that I can communicate with people.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things as a real estate guy, I'm not a huge systems person. So I'm a really good ideas person and I need somebody to help follow along. So this
Yeah,
past year, I've invested in some coaching to help build some of those systems where I can really stay in constant contact with people.
yeah. That I definitely agree there. I'm not a huge systems person either. I'm just I don't know. I'm just not organized enough, I guess, to be a system person, but I've learned to delegate that to somebody else who that's in their wheelhouse, and then I can go out and do the other things that I enjoy doing or that I'm good at.
And I think that's one of the things that attracts people like us to the industry. When you have all sorts of different personalities, but someone could call me and I can be very adaptable. And there's a lot of benefit to that. And then there's also some negatives to that personality, but hopefully more good than bad.
Yeah. I think we all have to be adaptable though, right? Because we never know who our next client may be, you know? So I think we all
Yeah.
have to be adaptable. We have to meet people where they're at, especially the way the real estate market is right now. You know,
Yeah.
you want them to stay with you. You still be yourself, but you also be adaptable. So
Yeah.
absolutely. So, what is some advice that you think you would give to, let's say, your seller clients or your buyer clients right now regarding real estate?
It's kind of an interesting time right now. I guess we've been saying that for the last several years. We've had a lot of extremes here. So now, Krystal, you may be seeing different things than what I'm seeing, but what I'm seeing is a lot of more inventory than we've had, not excessive amounts, a lot more days on market. So our whole economic system is basically built on debt, and the government uses interest rates as almost like a lever. So we had horrible things happen with
Yeah.
COVID, a lot of things. So obviously the government basically just tilted that lever to say, let's pump up this economy. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing, whenever you see everybody drinking expensive wine and expensive alcohol, it's never really a good sign of something's coming. Um, so the big thing, what we expect is there's supposed to be, historically speaking, some really good things that happen during an election year, but it's typically a little bit later after the election. So we expect to see some good growth. But I think right now, buyers have an opportunity to really come in and be aggressive. And then sellers just have to understand that there are just more inventory. It's no longer the same market. So you have to be willing to work with people
Yeah.
and, do things to the property. And it also makes a lot of sense to do everything you can to make your property stand out. So upgrades, staging, being able to come in and paint or do new carpet, those are all things that will really help you compete.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that because when you said we've seen extremes in this market, we definitely have, right? Like a few years ago, everything was multiple offers. The house is already gone by the time you get to look at it. And then we had the REIT companies who are buying up a lot of properties. And so your average first-time home buyer, they couldn't compete in that market very well. And so a lot of them may have missed out during that time. But like you said, now sellers are they're more willing to negotiate. They're more willing now to pay a little of your closing costs or to pay down your points or what have you, because they want to be in competition with the homes that are selling. This is some of the things you're going to have to do. A few years ago, you just put the home in the MLS and it didn't matter what it looked like. People were just buying stuff like crazy. But now I think a lot of the buyers, if you're going to charge the top-notch price and you're going to go as high as it could be, then your property has to match that condition. So I think a lot of buyers have kind of picked up on that. Well, okay, I need something if I'm going to spend this amount of money. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And the challenging thing is it's no longer a this or that thing. It's become difficult for a lot of people, right? So we have our first time home buyers, and the challenge with them is they have not, just buying something for the first time, looking at not record high interest rates, but very recently high record interest rates.
Yeah.
I think it got up to 8%. Now we're sitting somewhere around 6.8 to 7.1. We've been
Mhm.
fluctuating back and forth. And so my advice for the young guys is typically figure out ways that you can buy something that you can keep your living expenses down.
Yeah.
So I talk to a lot of people about house hacking and finding roommates or having like an in-law suite or multifamily. It's a really great way to buy something that you can hold on to long term that can be a long-term investment. But
True.
the challenge with buying this big house that's just for you is it eats up a lot of your monthly income. So
Yeah.
if you can find ways to figure out how to do that, but to also have someone else to pay that note down, it opens up your monthly income so that you can do more saving. And, you
Yeah.
know, yeah. And
Maybe,
I'm also,
I was just
I'll go
gonna say
ahead.
maybe more investing too down the line.
Yeah, exactly. And I talk a lot about home equity lines of credit and having access to that equity because one of the big things is as an investor that you need is access to equity. So you need to be able to float the storm.
Yeah.
So when I first got into real estate, I had seen the signs on the wall that real estate's a cycle. It happens on average every 7 years, and it's just part of it.
Yeah,
Gotta,
absolutely. Got to weather the storm.
that's true. I mean, most everybody in after 2008 was saying, "Man, I wish I would have bought properties then." It's the reason that people were not buying it is because there wasn't excessive amounts of cash floating around, and things were expensive and felt expensive, and that they were going down. But you know, and that is the challenge. But you hold it long enough, you pretty much always win.
Yeah, because that cycle comes right back around to when it's in your favor. So you're absolutely, absolutely right on that. So how do you keep yourself up to date with what's going on in the market, the new real estate trends or developments? How do you stay up to date with these things?
I think a lot of it is just kind of my own experience seeing what's out there. I realize that while I'm out shopping, I can only see a small percentage of a big ocean of our real estate economy. And then there's so many different niches in here. You could go for luxury, you could go for condos, townhomes, large multifamily. They're all very different. And I think I just try to read as much as I can. I subscribe to several different news things, even though several of them are brief. It's just trying to keep updated on what's going on because as someone in sales, people listen to you, but they're also watching you and they're
Yeah,
seeing and they're seeing you and they're seeing how you respond. And I
yeah,
think it's important for a lot of the people that are concerned on, it's definitely been a slower year than years past where it was absolutely crazy. We are still in probably one of the safest asset classes to help people buy. It's just
mm,
making sure that they get good value in the long
yeah,
run.
absolutely. So what you're saying about keeping up with the trends and stuff too, I was just thinking a lot of our clients are, we may not even know they're going to be a client yet, but like you said, they are listening to us. And even if they're getting this information somewhere else, they want to know what we think about it. Like, are we up to date? Are we aware that this is what they're saying? Things like that. Because as you know, in the media, it can paint a picture any way it wants to, and that may not be everybody's reality. So I think when you kind of, hunker down to your local market, people are really wanting to know, what do you think specifically about our local market, not necessarily as a whole, but that local market individually.
Yeah. I think our market is probably one of the most resilient, strong areas in the United States. I mean, we look right now at what's going on in Florida. They're having some major, major issues. Several of those cities are really hurting right now. You're having people that are dealing with insurance problems. I mean, whole insurance companies are leaving states.
Yeah.
HOA fees, specifically that area, you've got hurricanes, and it is a great place to be in as far as taxes go because of the no income. But you're also seeing the same thing that's going on in Texas right now. Austin's really having a hard time. And Nashville, I think, is just one of the most solid hubs that we have because our whole economy is basically built on healthcare. If you think
Yeah.
about Nashville
Yeah.
in itself, you would probably list the top three. One of those things would be tourism. And tourism is massive here, right? With Broadway and the new stadium that
Absolutely.
we're building. We've got the Preds, all sorts of sports teams. We're about to add a new stadium. But really, travel is actually like number 15 on the list. And it's such a good place because companies can come here and we've got such good talent. We call this in Nashville called the Athens of the South. Most people actually think that's because of the Parthenon that we have, but it's
Mm,
really all of our college universities here. And so
mm,
corporations can come here like Amazon and they know that they can fill the ranks in about a year's time.
yeah.
They can hire, of course it's hard. You'd have to hire aggressively, but organizations like Oracle, they're really going to change the game on this city and how we develop. And
Yeah.
so in itself, Nashville is seeing a little bit more inventory, a few price cuts, but we are a very safe city to be invested in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So going back to just maybe your average first time home buyer,
Sure.
what are you telling your clients now? What are you telling those first time home buyers?
Well, I think, really it makes more sense to listen than to tell them specifically, because at the beginning, you really got to figure out what's important to them.
Right.
Do they want a yard? Are they looking for long-term benefits? Are they looking for just a house that they can love? So depending on what they tell me, I can hear what they have to say, take that in, and then give them some suggestions. If someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for something super walkable," I've got a dog, they may be a good contender for the Nations or Germantown, possibly East Nashville, maybe Wedgwood, Houston.
Gotcha.
Um, and Wedgwood, Houston may not be the best because they don't have as many yards as the other properties. But
Yeah.
someone says, "Hey, we just had a kid," I'm probably thinking to ask them, probably time to think about schools. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
really good things going on in Mount Juliet. You obviously have Franklin, Spring Hill. So a lot of it is really just listening. And
Yeah.
then as far as when it comes to buying, my interpretation is my job's a matchmaker. And my job as a real estate agent is to come in and basically tell them all the reasons that they should not buy something. And then you instantly get credibility on that. And so when you can relay that to your clients and they feel safe knowing that you're trying to point out all the negatives, they can see obviously the positives. And I think it's actually pretty easy what we do. It's challenging the aspect that requires a lot of knowledge, but it's opening a door is not the hardest part of what we do. And so
Right.
I also tell people to go for the house that they want. Let me try to negotiate the price that you love.
There you go. I like that
So
one. Are there any specific houses or areas? I know you mentioned a few here, but are there any that you feel like let's hone in here on this location? I mean, of course, I know it depends on what their needs are, but do you have any specific market or specific style home that's kind of like your go-to, so to speak?
no, not really. I've sold a ton of new construction over the years, and I always think that tends to be a really great investment. Coming from an investor background, how I look at things is really trying to figure out what's important to people. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. So I always try to figure out how can we make this property profitable in the future. So we
Yeah.
talk a lot about midterm, short-term, and long-term investing with real estate. Most of my portfolio is really made up of long terms, and I do have one midterm, but I'm in the process now of building 6 short-term rentals.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I think with a lot of that, it truly is just trying to figure out like what is important to people. So if you're a young person and you're looking at how can I make the most amount of growth in the shortest amount of time, we'd look at different things from, I want a great house and a great school for my kids. And there's so many variables.
Right.
As far as areas of Nashville to keep an eye on, I actually think that there's some really good opportunity in North Nashville.
Mm.
North Nashville is what's called an opportunity zone. And
Yeah.
there's also parts of East Nashville in there too. And the government has looked at that area and said, "Hey, if you will invest here, if you hold it for 10 years, you can sell it and you pay no capital gains." So there's a lot of money rolling into those areas. And then there's some major, major development there on the East Bank that we're seeing, especially over by the Titan Stadium that's kind of all coming up. We've seen some really good booms like the Nations. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's going on, and kind of those areas we're going to see a ton of new construction pop up very, very rapidly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I do typically lean more towards new construction if I can, just kind of depending on what they want. But one thing I can always tell clients, typically with new construction, if you buy during the first, second, third phase, by the time they're completed with that neighborhood, you already instantly have, some equity. And right now, for at least some of the buyers that I'm working with or have experience with, that's kind of their thing. Like, okay, but what if we buy and then we can't sell it? Or what if this happens? And so I always try to tell people, don't borrow tomorrow's troubles. Right now, let's focus on this. Does it fit your needs for right now? Or no, do you think we should go somewhere else? So I think, like you said, just listening to them, kind of being honest with them, and actually knowing what their short-term, midterm, and long goals are. That can definitely play a part in where they choose their next home or their first home that they're buying.
That's very true. And then also, one of the great things about real estate is whenever you can just figure out how to put someone in there that can pay the note, they can cancel out that debt. And so a lot of times
Right.
it's very favorable to be able to access that money. But if you are truly just scaling and buying each time, you can, before you move out, you can always just open up a HELOC. You can pull out that equity, even though the equity is higher right now, but you can use that
Yeah.
and very favorable. And
Yeah.
whenever that property becomes an investment property, you get paid multiple ways. Most people think it's just my mortgage is 1,500 and I rent it out for 2,000, so I make $500. And if that's your way of thinking, you're really short selling yourself, because you not only get paid that, but you get to depreciate that property.
Hmm.
This is nothing news to you, but whatever your cost basis is, you can divide that by 27 and a half years and write that off on your taxes each year.
Yeah.
You have someone in the house paying your note each month, and it's also going to appreciate. A realistic goal for houses is 3 to 5% a year. And over the course of
Absolutely.
10 years, you're going to have 1 year that's probably 10 years of growth. You're going to have 1 year that you probably lose money on it. But on average, you're going to have 3 to 5% growth.
Yep.
And so if you can do that, and it's much easier to manage property than people think it is. Now, granted, you do need to learn about stuff. And if you're
Yeah.
nervous about it, it always makes sense to consult a property management company, because that's historically speaking where most of the wealth is tied up. Is it's grandma's house when she passes.
Right.
So what if grandma had 10 houses? Your family's life would be totally different.
That's true. Do you manage any properties that are not your own?
Not anymore. When I left Property Management Connection, I left a little bit of that behind. I still coach and consult a lot of people on how to manage those. There's some really cool systems now that make it easier than ever. But it is very important that you treat your real estate like a business. I mean, it can be a side hustle for sure, but it is, I have a rule that I try not to I don't rent to friends. Yeah, family can be tricky. Never had any issues with family, but there's no exceptions when it comes to my things. We look for 2.5 times income. We do a credit check, background check. We do a rental history check. We do a rental history check on 2 years, because the last person may just want them out of the property. And then also, if you're buying quality homes, you're going to get quality tenants most of the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
So if you're buying the duplex in Lewisburg that you bought for 100,000, you're going to get a different type of quality tenant, and that's
Yeah.
still a great investment,
Yeah.
or can be.
Yeah.
But it's definitely easier to manage when you have small issues.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I have a few properties that I manage for other investors and things like that. But I used to work for a company where that's kind of like all I did was portfolio management, and learned a whole lot there about the business. Some people, like you said, they're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And I get it. It's to each their own. But I think the way that I'm able to do it, it doesn't put a whole lot of stress or strain on me. And I have some clients who did BTRs, which those are going up like crazy now too. A lot of those BTRs, because I think the renters are thinking the same way the buyers are. If I'm going to rent, I want all the amenities that I can possibly get. And why not rent a brand new house if I was going to rent an older one? So,
yeah. Now, when you say BTR, you're talking about build to rent or buy?
uh-huh, built to rent.
Yeah, there could be a lot of benefits to that. The biggest challenge that a lot of those people have is they're just not qualified. And so they end up handing over some of that equity that they're not able to buy. But it gives people an opportunity to buy a property that some of those people may not be able to. So
That,
it can be a really great tool.
yeah, that is very true. Well, Reed, I enjoyed talking to you, getting to know you a little bit more and learn more about your business. Keep me up to date when you get your STRs. You said there's 6 of them that you're having built.
Yeah, really fun. This is my first development opportunity with my partner, Pete Rosser. Being an agent, you get to be exposed to so many things, and you get to hear all the feedback from your clients.
Yeah.
And then to finally have something that you do get to build and know the short-term rental market is a very unique space right now. We're seeing the 1 and 2 bedrooms, almost the 3 bedrooms, not really cash flow. And then the 4 bedrooms that are luxury are doing very well. And there's actually a huge demand for that. But the economy type scale where affordability Airbnbs are suffering right now.
Yeah.
We're just not seeing as much cash flow on them. So I actually was talking with a property management guy that just does short terms, and he was saying that they'll make about $100,000 a year, which is kind of cool for each one.
Hmm.
Of course, we've got a ways to go until we get there, but it'll be something exciting. These are actually right next to the airport. They'll have
Oh,
rooftop views downtown.
wow.
We're going to build them so that you actually can put hot tubs on the roof, which a lot of people make the mistake of just assuming that a hot tub can go up there, but the load isn't necessarily supported.
Uh,
So we're going to try to build it the right way. So it'll be a great fit for a really cool Nashville experience.
That is awesome. And right near the airport too?
I think it's about 2 miles away from the airport. So
Wow.
we're surrounded by hotels. It's the place that you want Airbnbs to be. Me and
Yeah.
my partner, we rezoned a lot and then closed on it, and we're going through all the permit process now. So hopefully we start building around March.
That
So
is awesome. That's exciting. Well, yes, definitely keep me in the loop on how that's going. Well, I thank
yeah,
you for joining the podcast today, you guys. Mr. Reed Sircy, he shared some nuggets and some education for us and a lot of helpful tips, I think, on how to approach buying, how to approach investing, even the house hacking that you mentioned. So all of those are things that people want to know more about. So I appreciate you sharing those gems with us. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully, we'll have you on the podcast another time.
cool. Thanks,
All
Krystal.
right, you're welcome. You have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.